Good evening, and welcome to the Caring View, the online health and social care platform free to access to absolutely everybody. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, that like button, that share button. Do whatever you want to share the work we are doing here at the Caring View. www.thecaringview.co.uk gives you access to all of our podcast episodes, our chat show episodes, our free resources. We now have a new subheading on free resources with free downloadable posters. You already know about our CQC posters that we have up there for you to download, but we've now got new ones, and we will be building them up as we go along. I think at the moment, Mark, we've got things around diabetes foot care. We also have, I don't know, loads. Go and check it out. Why listen to me? Just go to the website and go and find out. Huge apologies to anyone watching us this evening, or not watching us as it may be, because Instagram and LinkedIn have failed us, and I am so sorry about this. Technology is wonderful when it works. So we will look into that and get that rectified next week. Everything we do here is absolutely free to access, doesn't cost you a penny. And the reason we can do this for free is through our fabulous sponsors. So I need to give them a quick shout out as we go through now. So huge shout out to Prosperworld, the UK's leading digital marketing agency. Their website should be on the screen right now. Go and check those out. If you know Toby from Tea with Toby, also go and check out his podcast as well. Absolutely fab resource there for you. We also have CBAT, or Care Business Associates Training. Their MD, Paul Blaine, will be joining us on the show in a couple of weeks' time. So please do stay tuned for that and go and check out CBAT training for all of your health and social care needs. And last but not least, and won't be last but not least, for the near future, because we do have a new sponsor coming on board, more about that soon, is Attis Care by Attis Insurance Brokers. Everything you need for your comprehensive care coverage and proactive risk management. Say it after me: we hate insurance, but we need it. So go to Attis Care and they will help you out. Other than that, I think we're just going to get cracking tonight. We have got our Rewind podcasts that are live now. So if you've missed out on our preparing for your CQC inspection under the new framework, we have got those safe, effective domain episodes up on our podcast, and Caring will be live on Monday this week coming. And we've also made a special podcast playlist on YouTube, so you can easily access it there. I believe Mark's just reconnected us to LinkedIn and Facebook somehow, because I've got ticks there. So if you are now watching us on those channels, rewind and listen to everything I've just said. I'm not repeating myself. Yes, Mark, fingers crossed. Good evening, Mark. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. Mark, have you moved to the moon?
No, but my signal has gone very dodgy since I reconnected LinkedIn. I'm not going to lie. It's like it sucked all my internet out of my ass. But
oh, your lips have caught up now. Your lips have caught up. That's okay. LinkedIn is punishing us. Kavita, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Raring to go.
Raring to go. Down in, is it rainy Southampton?
Now sunny Southampton.
Sunny Southampton, that's what I like to hear. Kavita, for those who don't know you and didn't see your previous episode, first, why not? Go and check it out, all around revolutionising appraisals and supervisions. But who are you and where are you from?
So, Kavita Brown from LDG Training, worked in social care, adult social care for over 20 years. I'm going to guess 21, 22 years, something around that number. Predominantly working in learning development, people kind of roles, supporting ops teams, quality teams, small organisations, really tiny independent ones, as well as large national organisations. So LDG Training since 2019.
Wow, fantastic. And you can find out all about LDG training directly on our website under our supply list, but we will share the link to your website as we go through tonight's show. So tonight we're discussing building and maintaining a positive workplace culture. And it's... we joked about this before, and if we don't know how to do this now, why are we still doing what we're doing? And I don't mean that coldly, but it's that integral now that a lot of the quality statements are built around the idea of this positive culture, this positive workplace. I mean, and how we're maintaining that and supporting our team. I mean, I'm in the middle of completing 3 PIRs because CQC hate me and I've sent them all through at the same time. And there are, huge questions in the PIR alone around what have we done to sort of support our team, team, around making sure that we're supporting the inclusivity and the diversity of our teams, and culture as a whole. So, Kavita, I'm going to start by asking, what do we mean by positive workplace culture?
Oh, interesting question. I think culture, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's so key now under the new, it always was key, don't get me wrong, but much more profound under the new single assessment framework. But I think culture is that thing that people can't really pinpoint it, can't really figure out exactly what it is, because it's not a policy that you can write saying this is what our culture is. It's not a fancy marketing poster that we can put up saying this is what our culture is. It's just so much more than that. I always express culture to be almost that feeling you get when you walk in somewhere. You pick up on that culture. It's almost that personality, the character of that particular service. And if I'd never visited that service before, as soon as I walk through the door, that feeling I get, the warmth, the greeting, hopefully, that I get, how I see staff interacting, how I see staff behaving, that's all telling me everything about the culture. So I suppose you could add together the traditions of that service, the values of the service, the behaviours of that service, the things that, should I say, happen whereas managers may not see happen. So the realities of the service, as opposed to the nice fluffy stuff we think all works. I think if you add all of those things together, it starts to develop actually a workplace culture. And I think we've all probably worked in places in our career, I definitely have, where it's a real bad culture, it's a toxic culture. And I think that's easy to identify. We know, we get that feeling like, I don't want to work here no more, I can't work here no more, people start to leave, etc. But it's really hard. I think it's much harder to identify, actually, have I got a good culture? Well, I haven't got all these other signals. But then I suppose the trick is, how do I keep it there? How do I nourish it? How do I maintain it? How do I keep it as a positive culture? Because it quite easily slips down, very easily, if you take your eye off the ball.
I think you are right around this. How do we identify? I've just messaged Mark saying over to you, and I'm going to butt in quickly before Mark does. It reminds me, this idea of how do we identify whether we've got good culture, of one of my favorite ever Christmas films, which is The Santa Claus, with Tim Allen. And it's when he's in the North Pole and he's like, I can see it, but I don't believe it. And Judy, the little elf, yeah, I'm a bit of a swap. Judy, the little elf, she's like, seeing isn't believing. Believing is seeing. And it's really true when it comes to that workplace culture as well. We can put all these different things about what we do, but unless you can actually believe it and you feel that, then it doesn't really exist. You can't just see it. It's something that you've got to feel and hear, and you've got to sort of resonate with and connect with.
You're right. And have that knock-on effect to everybody that's in there, whether that's including, your staff members, professionals coming in, family members, the people that were supporting themselves, everybody seeing it, feeling it, believing it.
Yeah. And if it does not warm up anytime soon, my Christmas trees are going up in a month's time. Mark, over to you.
So just going back to something you touched on there. So before you've got the culture, you've got to have the right vision and values. Now, I know we've spoken before about the importance of visions and values, but there will be people thinking that, I know I've got poor culture. I think there's a lot of talk at the moment around what's happening with the CQC and about their culture within their organisation and how that needs to change. And there will be people that are thinking, actually, how do I go about resetting my vision, resetting my values? You might work for a company that it's not right, a company that doesn't have any at all, or that was set years ago and have no kind of bearing on what the workplace kind of looks like now. What would be the first steps in order to get the right vision and values so that you can then start that journey?
I think if we have a look at hierarchy, now I'm not a major fan of hierarchies, but if we have to look at a hierarchy, I think it's about getting those people at the top of the hierarchy together to first identify, actually, we haven't got a vision or values, or they're not the right ones. They were developed so many years ago, things have changed, or people don't actually know what they are. But I would always say you've got to involve as many team members as you possibly can, and ideally your residents and your family members as well. So if you're in a care home setting, for example, if you're domiciliary care, then why not involve the users of your service and their family members as well? And really to define, actually, all of us working in this organisation, what do we want this vision to be? What do we want the values to be? What are the true values? A lot of companies say to me, well, no, we've got values. Look at that poster that's up there. It's on our website, it's plastered everywhere. But they're probably not the true values of the organisation. So if you want to test yourself, I suppose, if you're brave enough, and if your staff are open enough to support in this activity, then do ask them, mean, first ask them that, name 3 words that you would describe as our values or our culture is working, in XYZ place. And they'll say all the things you probably want them to say, that you want to hear. They'll say things like dignity, compassion, respect, quality, etc., etc. Once you've got all of that out of the way, then ask them the second most important question, which is, now tell me, what are the real values? What's it really like to work here? And then you'll start to unravel actually what that culture is. And what and what people think it is that are actually working there, not the fancy marketing poster that you've paid God knows how much for, that's on the wall, that nobody really lives by. But yeah, going back to your question, I think always relook at, we know under Well Led, they're talking about having a strong vision and values and culture, which is lived and breathing by everybody. So involve everybody and ask them, what should our values be? They don't have to be I'm not going to say typical ones, but the ones that you see all the time: caring, respect, dignity, compassion. I always think, well, surely we should be doing that anyway. They shouldn't really be our values. That should be core in everything we do. So what are our values? And it could be something like having fun. So actually, when we're at work, we're having fun. Yes, it's, a really tough job, an emotionally draining job at times as well. But we actually can have fun whilst we're at work. And if you think about some of the shifts patterns people do, like 12, 14-hour days, that's a hell of a long time to be at work. And yeah, going through what they're going and supporting people, potentially at the end of life, with different behaviours that challenge, etc., that, you can do something different. You don't have to stick to the ones, because I would always say those are the ones that we should be doing. We should be treating people with quality, with compassion. We should be treating people with dignity and respect and kindness, etc., etc. I'm not saying you can't have those, but mix it up a bit, play around with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think if there's anybody thinking, actually, is there any kind of guidance? I think Adam spoke earlier around the quality statements, but I think actually, if you look at the shared direction and culture quality statement, it lays it out quite simply around, actually, you should have a shared vision, strategy, and culture. But then under what the quality statement means, it does almost break it down. So it talks about a bit like what you just mentioned there, around leaders that are involved in that staff are involved in it, that everybody knows. Talks about actually how it's communicated, that there's a structured planning process for them, that it starts at the top. So it kind of talks your way through exactly what you've just said, all the way down to actually staff knowing actually their part within the organisation and how they feed into kind of meeting that. Adam, interesting kind of thing that just popped into my head. You've obviously, and it feels like in my head it was like last month, but it's been a lot longer, started in a new organisation and kind of embarked on a lot of change. How's that bit? Have you had to do any work around vision and values or the culture in general? Or
so we do a lot of work around the culture, embedding visions and values. I think for myself and the organisations we're in, I recently joined, and there's no secret, I joined at a time where everything was quite turbulent. So a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last sort of 9 months has been sort of remedial work of historic stuff. Now we're in a really great place. Like, our services are blossoming and shining, and there's a place where I'm really proud to work. I think our next sort of steps moving forward now is really embedding that. I think for me, it starts with identifying and understanding who the most important person is within your organization. And a lot of people go, oh, the director, or oh, it's the team. When actually the most important person, the most important people in our service are the people who use our service. Because without them, there is no need for us to exist. There is no need for us to be there. And if we don't get that in our heads, and I'm not talking about my organization per se here, I'm talking around social care as a whole. If we don't recognize the people who use our services as the most important asset that we have, then we're never going to include them. We're never going to involve them. We're never going to meet the sort of standards that we're supposed to be meeting. And then when we do go out and create our visions and cultures and all that jazz, it will never be truly whole, because we've missed out a whole entire element of what's important to us. The second most important people in our organization are the people that provide that direct care, because they are working with those people who use our services every single day. And I'm with you, Kavita. I hate hierarchies. I don't think hierarchies are the thing. Yes, we need professional boundaries, and I think professional boundaries are great. And I think we need structure, because we need to know who we're reporting to, and we need to know who to feed back to. But I think hierarchies instantly put up that brick wall. It's like a Berlin Wall that comes up. And actually, if you have your hierarchy at the top and the people who are at the bottom using your service and your team members, look at gravity. It's really hard to go uphill. And if you're rolling something uphill, it's really hard to get to the top. If you flip that over and have the people at the top being the people that are the most important, then any feedback, any input, any sort of interaction with them, it's just going to come flying down, and you're going to absorb it, accept it. You might not do anything with it because you might not be able to do anything with it, but at least you're there in that sort of productive mindset of including everybody in your service. And having you at that bottom part going, well, that's fine. I'm not the most important person here, and I'm okay with that. I may have the most stressful job at times, but I am not the most important person. So yeah, we are doing. There's a lot more that we want to do, and a lot more of what we want to do now is around really embedding the regulations and the framework itself. So always relating back to the framework, always relating back to those regulations, and anything we do go, how does this meet this regulation? How does that meet this quality statement? And what's the impact on the person? If we're going to do something, what's the impact first? Is it going to have a positive impact on people? Because if it's not, and we're doing it for brownie points, why are we doing it? We're doing it for the wrong reason. I will always remember when the new ratings framework came out, years ago. I want to say something like 2015, but it was probably earlier than that. And the good, the outstanding, the inadequate, and everything came up. And for the first sort of 2 weeks, we had it up on our board with a big circle around the outstanding with an arrow saying, this is what we want to be. We want to be outstanding. And then after about 2 weeks, I sat there and I thought, but who do we want to be outstanding for? Do I want to be outstanding for the regulator so that they can blow smoke up my arse? Or do I want to be outstanding for the people who use our services? And do I want them to think we're outstanding? Because does it matter if the regulator thinks I'm outstanding? Or does it matter to me more that the people who use my services think, oh my God, do you know what? My life is amazing. I'm living well. I'm happy. I'm supported. I'm protected. I'm respected. I've got all these wonderful opportunities. That for me means a heck of a lot more, because it's the impact of what we're doing. And if we get that bit right, then yeah, the regulator might go, do you know what? Wow, you are amazing. Tens across the board. Fine. That's a Brucey bonus for us. But it's really around, for me, embedding that human element now, that human culture and the person. I was sat with, who was I talking to today? I was talking to someone today, and they said, for your patients. Oh, I don't mean patients. It's residents, isn't it? I said, you could use the word people. Just going to throw that out there. We could say people, because people applies to everyone, and what we do here doesn't apply to people differently. We're looking after people, whether that be our team, whether that be people who use our services, whether it be ourselves. We're looking after people. So I'm this huge, I know I'm rambling, but it's that huge human person element that we need to sort of inject back into social care. And I think if we get that right, we're very close to sort of nailing off really good culture. Bearing in mind you can't see it, believing it's seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Definitely. That's interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Adam. Interesting when you go to another organisation and it is something different, and it's a different kind of culture, different vibe. And yeah, is it right? Isn't it right? What can we do to really inject it in there? And equally, when you go to organisations where people have stayed for quite a long time, sometimes they've lost that. Well, what is our culture? When you ask them that question, what's the culture? And they can't really answer it. What's the values? What underpins everything? So I think it's one of those things that you have to kind of almost, as a leader, have at the forefront and constantly keep thinking about it and ask yourself the question, right, this decision I make about X, Y, Z, how is that going to impact the culture? And it could be something that people, I suppose, in social care, from my experience, struggle with, having those difficult conversations with other team members. So maybe about poor performance, lateness, hygiene, I don't know, etc. Really, people struggle with that. But actually, just asking yourself the question of, if I don't have this conversation with Kavita about her lateness, how is that going to impact my culture? Yes. And then you're always thinking of it, always bringing it to the forefront. And then you realize, how does that impact on our values? That we have as an organisation. So that should really lead our decision making going forward, and bringing everything back to question, what's the impact? I mean, I've worked in an organisation, and the manager really struggled to have the difficult conversations with team members, but everybody loved the manager. Everybody really rated the manager. So I think it was a lot of goodwill that was going on. And about maybe a year, just over a year into it, people started to slowly leave. Some really good key workers started to leave, and other people started to become a lot more vocal. And the reason they were leaving, the reason people became vocal was because poor performance wasn't being managed. So you had these really good workers who not only done a great job, actually lived it and breathed it and were passionate about it, who were leaving because they were picking up the slack for the ones that just got away with it. Over time, sadly, what that left in the service, sadly, was all the standards came down, and we ended up having a group of people that all worked very similar, didn't really have the same kind of passion and enthusiasm. Some people that did stay, they just lowered their standards, because if they're getting away with it, then why am I doing extra? And it just really changed the culture. And if I really go back and think, and I spent a lot of time thinking, where did we go wrong here? It's literally started off, the root cause, I would say, was not having those difficult conversations, not picking up on poor performers, and then it affects everything else as well.
No, it really does. And I think we've spoken before on the show numerous times around actually that manager, I bet if you have a look, probably was a care worker to begin with, and then has done a really good job and worked her way up to a senior and has done a really good job and maybe a deputy and then into that manager, but actually probably hasn't had the training and the skills to be able to manage that because actually the investment in her or him just wasn't there. And I think we do need to make sure that actually as managers, as leaders, we are vocal about actually where our weaknesses lie so that we can improve. Absolutely. But also have that reflectiveness with our team of saying actually what doesn't work and what works well, so that they feel that they can approach you to tell you.
And you're right. And also the organisation is not just putting somebody into that position, but actually supporting them in that position. Yeah, they could have been a great senior carer. Doesn't mean they're going to be a great deputy. Let's give them the tools to do the job, and then there will be a great deputy because they've got the right values, the right behaviours that sit behind it. Let's skill them. Let's give them the skills so they can be really effective. Because I think in our sector, we do set people up to fail. And then we're quick to point the fingers at them without looking at, actually, have we even invested in this person? And I don't mean investment as in go off and do qualifications for years and years, or send them on all of these grand courses, but actually investing that time and effort, and sometimes learning and development, so they do know how to have they have the confidence of having difficult conversations. They have the confidence of, all those people management side, which people call soft skills. They're absolutely not soft skills. They're probably core essential skills, I would say.
I suppose it's a bit like when you joined us last time for the supervision conversation, where we were saying actually you need to think outside the box. Actually, I think when it comes to training and development, you need to think outside the box for the manager, because actually, do they really need to do all the, the mandatory training that a care worker does? Because actually, are they going to utilise that training? Could you actually save your money if you're a hard-strapped provider? Actually, don't put them on this training, but put them on something else that is going to benefit them, and actually long-term will benefit the organisation and the team.
Yeah, really target it. Yeah, I think that's something that CQC are now looking for as well, aren't they? That people, I know they always have done, but they're making a bit more of a thing of it, where individuals in the organisation have their own personal development plan. So for them, these are what my areas of development are, and so it's a lot more targeted at those areas, rather than just, I'm not a fan of just sheep dipping everybody through everything. Oh, it's that moving and handling time, once a year, let's sheep dip everybody back through it as well, because then things like that affect the culture. all of these things link back to the culture, whereas if you're targeting it to say, you know what, we've never had any issues of moving and handling, you support all the new people that are here, let's do an on-the-job competency assessment, and I'll observe you. You're doing everything you should be doing. Why do I need to sheep dip you through that course again? You don't need to. We've still got the evidence that they were up to date and they've refreshed, but I don't need to, do all of that. So you're right. Yeah, think outside the box when it comes to it as well.
We all spoke at once. I was just going to say, for anybody that was listening there around competency, the framework does mention around competency. They don't inspect around. They don't tell you what training you need to deliver. They just expect your staff to be adequately trained. But there is something in the single assessment framework that talks around competency. So definitely a useful tool to have. Sorry, going over to both of you.
Go for it, Adam.
No, I was going to say one of the things that I am looking at introducing to our service is a manager's revalidation. So a bit like how our gens would do, and they have to revalidate their learning and everything like that, is very much like this. Actually, why are we putting them on things like movement handling and safeguarding and stuff to do that sort of basic generic training? Well, safeguarding, for example, managers need to do like something like 9 hours or 15 hours over a 3-year period, something crazy like that, isn't it? And actually, what I want to know is, what have they learned whilst working in post, and how are they upskilling themselves all the time? So have they done any back to the floor days as a manager? Have they gone back to the floor, worked with the team, seen what it's like on the floor, and what's been the impact to them on that? What have they identified, and what changes have they made following that? You know, how are they keeping up to date with new leadership styles and new leadership skills and management skills? And that's the sort of stuff that I really want to focus on in developing people, is that supportive. It sounds a bit like, revalidate, otherwise you don't get your job. But actually, we need to be asking those questions of our managers, because there is that element of personal responsibility as well. There's that accountability. We can't give people everything. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And we've got to trust people to want to start developing themselves and to get better and to get to be the people that we need them to be in those posts. I mean, look at Regulation 19, fit and proper persons employed. How are you as a provider assured that the people that you have got employed are fit and proper and suitable for the role? You know, things like that will really benefit people. And it's some of the stuff that I am looking at developing within our organizations, and then doing a bit of a case study on how it's worked, you know, because you get your appraisals that come around, but how are you judging that appraisal fairly? You know, what sort of work are you doing to go, oh, you've passed your appraisal, woohoo? You know, actually, what sort of work have you done as a manager over this last 12 months that has revalidated this area, and this area, and this area, and this area? You know, give them, part of the revalidation to make sure that 5 quality statements are included in their annual revalidation, and how they've met those quality statements as a manager. You know, things like that, to really embed those practices and to give that personal responsibility back. I want to go back just slightly, Kavita, because we were talking about how you said that sometimes not having those difficult conversations can lead to poor culture. How should leaders handle conflicts or negative behaviours that, for want of a better phrase, threaten the workplace culture?
I think it's about, first of all, stepping back. And I suppose before I go on to answer that question, I think in every team, when you look at all the different theories, in every team, of course, you're going to have people that are your doers, people that are your followers, but you are also going to have people that are your challengers. And so just because somebody's challenging you, or I'm not saying challenging authority, but maybe challenging a decision that you've made. So we might have made a decision that actually for this particular person, we can no longer meet their needs, so they now need to go X, Y, Z. But actually the people that are working, your frontline workers that are working with them may disagree with that decision that we've made. So I'm not talking about managing conflict and that type of behavior. We shouldn't get that confused with people that challenge, because I think we need people that do challenge at every single level. If you do go back to a hierarchy, every single level, you need people that are passionate enough to speak up and to challenge the status quo, challenge why we're doing something, challenge decisions that are made. So I wouldn't want anybody thinking, oh, that means that that person's a poor performer, or they haven't got the right behaviors and it affects our culture. So then once you have people that are challengers and we give them a platform to air those challenges, actually it makes us think and act and do differently. We might tweak things accordingly as well. So what we're really talking about here are people that really are displaying those behaviors which are not the right behaviors for the organization. Before you even get to what are the right behaviors, I think every organization almost needs that kind of, people call it competency framework. You don't have to use fancy language. You can call it whatever you want. But people first need to know, what does good look like? What are you actually expecting of me? If I joined your organization today as a care member of staff, what do you expect from me in the organization? How do you expect me to behave? How do you expect me to conduct myself? What does good look like? So once we know what good looks like, we then know, obviously, what isn't good. And I think that's when we can pick up those conversations. So when there is conflict in the team, when there is conflict between people, or there is somebody that isn't, I suppose, following that code of conduct or displaying those correct behaviours, for example, sometimes it can right itself, hopefully. And I've seen this work in real good cultures, real positive cultures. Team members between them challenge that individual, and support that individual to pick up their performance again. So maybe that person keeps coming in late. Other people will pick up on that and support them if you've got a really good positive culture. So not having to go at them, not pointing fingers at them, but actually encouraging them. No, that's not good enough here. This is how we do it. This is how we operate. We expect people to be here a minute, 5 minutes before our shift starts, etc., etc. So sometimes that does work, but in other ways, you as a leader will need to step in and have that conversation. And I always say the best way to have a conversation is an adult to adult conversation, and lay your cards out on the table. Don't go in with the mindset that you've got to tell somebody off. Don't go in with the mindset that they're in trouble. It's just having that understanding, right? Mark, you're constantly coming into work late. Help me to understand what's going on. And what do you need from me, or what are you going to do? Because this is what we expect from our team members. But you can't have these conversations unless people already know what good looks like. And 9 times out of 10, people don't.
No, I totally agree. And I'm really glad, actually, you pulled up the word conflict, because I don't know whether you've ever read it. It's, I can't remember his name. I want to call him Patrick Leone, but I think that's a really wrong surname. It's something like that. It's called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, or the dysfunctional team model. And I don't know whether you know it. And for me, it is really, really sort of essential reading for new budding managers who want to get into leadership and management. Some of the terms may be archaic now, some of the practices may be archaic now, but it runs on that 5 elements where you've got, imagine a pyramid. At the bottom, you've got, so the top is your results. This is what you want to achieve. And actually, you've got an inattention to results from your team members. And what does that start off with? And it starts off with a lack of trust. And if people don't trust you as a manager, as a leader, then they aren't going to provide that conflict. They're going to be fearful of conflict. And conflict is really positive, because if everyone, as a manager, said, this is what we're going to do, and all of your team just went, whatever, you're not going to get that sort of commitment from them. So without that sort of that conflict, and without that sort of trust that's building up, you then don't get that commitment from people. They become a little bit ambiguous, they become a little bit sort of sketchy when it comes to that sort of team goal and what have you. And then that sort of leads to a lack of accountability. Well, that's not my job, that's his job, or that's their job. It's not my fault they've not done it. You don't have that accountability. And if you don't have that accountability, you're never going to get the results you want, because you're going to find out that your team members are more concerned around their own results than the holistic results of the entire team. There is no I in team, and it's really, really important that when we think of goals as a group, we need to make sure they are collaborative goals that everyone feeds into and everyone shares in the glory of. Otherwise, we come straight back down to that lack of trust. Why should I have conflict? They never listen to me. They never change. Because I can't change what things are going to do, I'm not really going to commit. And because I'm not committing, I don't care who does the job and who doesn't do the job. As long as I get done what I need to get done, that's all that matters. And that breeds that really dysfunctional team. So conflict is really good. In fact, one of our values in our organization is be curious. I like that. To be curious.
Challenge something. I've always said, when we've had new people join organizations, I've always said, let's ask them the question. Let them rip it apart. They're seeing it completely differently. They've got no emotional attachment at this stage towards how we do things here. So actually ask them, what do they think needs to improve? They'll tell you what things that we can't see, because we see it all the time. I'm glad you kind of picked up on that kind of almost that silo-ness of individuals in a team as well, to think, well, that's not my job, that's somebody else's job. But equally, especially those of you that are in larger services, you'll also have subcultures, and that becomes quite difficult to then manage. So you've got your care team, you've got your domestic team, your activities team, you've got your kitchen team, which is always an interesting culture in the kitchen as well. So actually, even though we're talking about culture as a whole, you will have subcultures, your night team, your day team, for example, all these different subcultures. So it's also trying to pull those together. So like you said, Adam, they're not going off working in silo. We don't want to, somebody from the domestic team saying, oh yeah, I thought that resident may have, something might be happening with that resident, but it's nothing to do with me. I'm just a cleaner. So I left it to the care team, but they didn't move on with it. It's almost getting everybody to live and breathe this whole culture we want, all these values and visions that we're working towards, but we want everybody to work towards it. So not having yes, you're always going to get the subcultures, but I suppose it's about trying to bring them together. So get them together to communicate really regularly, get them to challenge each other's behavior. Challenge, again, is not a bad thing as well. where you can, try to move people around so people start to understand, oh, okay, it's not that easy working in a laundry. And believe me, it's not. It's not actually that easy working in a kitchen as well. And then really celebrate those positive examples. So when you've got teams working really well together. So, for example, one of the services that I was working in, there were quite big floors in each of these homes. I think it was about an 85-bedded place. And they were quite big floors. But when that domestic person was on that floor, they were part of that team. Yes, they did get managed by the head of, the head housekeeper. But actually, when they're working, whoever was running that team on that floor, that shift, they would also include the housekeeper. So it wasn't that the housekeeper just comes and just does the cleaning and off they go. No, it's actually I need you to do that area first, and then can you do that bedroom? Or actually, can you just stop that for a moment? Can you just help us with this particular resident? Or can you just sit next to them to play a board game because XYZ's happening? So everybody became part of it. It wasn't a case of, no, but I'm just a cleaner. I'm just here to do the cleaning. I'm not allowed to do that. It was really encouraging that extra teamwork. And even when the dining room assistants were there, for example, even when the chef was there to serve the food, etc., actually everybody's in that team, and whoever's running the shift on that team knew that, and that really helped to break down.
It's just essential to get rid of us and them culture, isn't it?
Yeah.
That us and them, they're them and this is me and that's that, and we're on these separate sides of the fence. Mark, what's been your experience in this area?
I think all the care homes I've managed have always been learning disability service. And I do think that when I compare it to older people, there is just a different mentality, because I don't think you have that divide. I think everybody is just lumped in together. You don't tend to have the cook, the cleaner, and, departments. You just have your support workers that just do everything. So I don't think you kind of have that divide. I think the divide possibly comes from the day staff and the night staff. But I think it's around how you manage rotas as well, to a degree, because actually what overtime can people pick up? Because I know that I've taken over services, and prior to managing them, only the night staff can pick up night overtime, and day staff can only pick up certain daytime shifts. And actually, why can't they cross over, and why can't they, make that transition to break that down? Yeah. Actually, why don't staff do a mixture of both? Because actually, do a mixture of earlys, lates, sleep-ins if you have sleep-ins, but night shifts, because then actually everybody knows what it's like. And you don't have to do them on a regular basis, even if you say to everybody, actually as a team, which is what we did in the care home I was managing kind of pre-pandemic, was actually all of us once a month, even me included, we all do a night shift, because actually we see what's happening across the service at all points of the day, and we get to know actually what the challenges are on each shift. We get to know kind of what our colleagues are going through, and there's that kind of understanding. And actually a lot of people used to then transfer across. So actually the staff that started on night shifts, as childcare didn't become more of an issue, they moved into day shifts. And actually those younger staff that were doing days, as they had children, just then transferred into the night shifts, and it kind of just blended in. But I definitely think there is something around your rostering. So I suppose for older people in care homes, actually, does everybody have a go taking it? A bit like what you said in that laundry, does everybody have a go in the kitchen? Even if it's not actually them leading it, but just shadowing. And I suppose we talked about objective setting earlier and annual performance. Actually, why doesn't everybody's annual performance include a goal of upskilling and learning a role of somebody else, and spending at least 5-6 shifts per year learning somebody else, and actually how that role plays a part in that organisation?
Yeah. And encouraging people as well. So again, another service, we had some domestic assistants, and they would normally finish their shift around about the 2 o'clock mark, but they just loved being there. So they would go and spend some time with the residents, and they weren't paid for this, but they'd go and spend some time with the residents. They'd play some games or sit and read a book with them, whatever it may well be. They were great. I thought they were fantastic. We had a change of management who put a stop to that, and was very much, no, but your domestics, your shift finishes at 2, so you need to leave at 2. It was just really bizarre, because that just changes the culture of everything. And then these domestic assistants, who are brilliant, literally just came into work when they had to and left when they had to. They wouldn't do anything extra. They were just tied to that, because they found great pleasure in just staying for an hour after their shift and reading books or playing games with residents, whatever it may well be, or just sitting chatting to them, and it was taken away from them. I think that's horrible. Yeah,
We get
like
so caught up in litigation, don't we? But are we insured to have you in the building when you're not working and blah 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 blah.
I was about to say we had this, and then we had somebody come in from HR that said, actually, if you're volunteering your time after, you should then be paid it because you're technically on shift. So what we actually did was we then had staff that then joined as volunteers. So we had two separate staff files. One was their contracted hours, one was volunteer file, and then they stayed after. But what we actually did is we had different perks and benefits if you were a volunteer than you were if you had a contract with us. So actually they then benefited both ways. So actually they were giving up their time because they didn't want to go home. They had an extra hour, a couple of hours before the school pickup or whatever it was that they were doing.
Yeah.
But actually they got a different benefit from doing that, and actually a way of saying thank you and acknowledging and recognizing that, which did work really well and got around the kind of what you were just talking about. If a manager doesn't like it, or if HR say actually they shouldn't be volunteering their time, because you get a lot of people that only work kind of 16 hours because of benefits, but would like to do a lot more. So then they end up doing 16 hours, but then volunteering their time, but not being paid for it. Actually, if you can find some kind of recognition around rewarding that, actually people are more likely to do it as well. And they feel good because actually they enjoy doing it, but they're getting something in return that they weren't expecting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you're giving them some sort of acknowledgement, reward, recognition, whatever it may well be that they're doing. Yeah. I also wanted to touch on the environment. So sometimes, again, we can have these great values, this is our culture, this is how we treat people. And services I've been into, they talk about things like, we take pride in the work we do. We deliver a great quality service. And then you go into the staffing area and it's completely run down. It's just got mismatched furniture or sometimes no furniture, really uncomfortable space. And I think when we talk about culture, your environment has to match the culture you're trying to create. I'm not saying they need to have a snazzy, a glitzy staff area, but actually, if we're, as an organisation, if we're not taking pride in our staff areas, rest areas, then are we really living and breathing that culture? It's otherwise behind the scenes, it's not happening. And that has a massive impact on the staff team as well. Another example is if we say that one of our values or something that is really important to us in our culture is that we treat people with dignity and compassion. Do we allow our staff to have those conversations with our residents, with our service users? So if somebody is distressed, that they are able to stay there for that 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it may well be. So they're talking to that person. I'm not saying they're being a counsellor, but they're helping that person to unpack and find out why they're distressed. Or are we putting pressure on them saying, no, but you've got to go over there. Lunch is about to be served. Breakfast, they're going to miss breakfast. And we put all this time pressure on them. So then we just end up becoming task orientated. So I think whatever culture you want to develop, you've got to also look at, is that practical? Does that happen in reality? Does our environment sing the same thing? And do we allow our staff to actually do it? Or actually, are we just, let's hold our hands up and be honest, it's just a fancy thing to put on our website to attract more people to live here or to attract more customers?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it is, it's kind of a bit like, Downton Abbey, isn't it? Upstairs, downstairs, and, your servants in the servant hall with poor facilities. And I know that our team break areas are on my list of things to transform over the next 6 months, because I really do want to invest in the team as much as we can. Mark, I just want to go back to your point then around rostering and making sure that our sort of rotas reflect the culture. And I suppose we can't talk about that without discussing flexible working either. Because social care is very rigid. 8 till 8, 8 till 8, that's what it is, that's what you're getting. Or you can do an 8 till 2 if you want, or a 2 till 8. And it's like, well, that's great, but I've got kids and I've got this and I can't do this and I can't do that. The law changed, as far as I'm aware, from 6th of April this year. And I think people are allowed to now submit 2 flexible working requests within a 12-month period. And as employers, you only have 2 months to respond to them. And I think if you've got multiple team members saying, look, can I have different working hours, or is there any way to make this more flexible? Then I think you need to sit there internally and go, do our shift patterns currently work, or do we need to make these a little bit better? Is there a way that we can provide alternate shift patterns that cover everything, that people are happy with, that cover the care that we need, so that we can meet the needs of our team, so they're happier and they've not got that much stress? Because if they are running late every single day to work and they're getting in at 10 past, 8:15, and we're finding out that actually because they're dropping the kids off at school and they've got no one else to do it because they have got no family, As an employer, where's your heart? How do you work around that? And I know people aren't entitled, stoicism. No one's entitled to anything in life, and I get that. But really, if we want to create that culture where we've got really good team members who are keen to stick by us, can we look at the way we do things, and can we change our patterns of working to be more flexible? And there are only 8 reasons to refuse a flexible working request, and I've got them up here. So I just want to read them out just to make us all aware that actually there's not many reasons why we can't say to someone, no, you can't have flexible hours. So extra costs that will damage the business. Well, not really if someone wants to do a different shift. The work cannot be reorganized amongst other staff. People cannot be recruited to do the work. Flexible working will affect quality. Flexible working will affect performance. The business will not be able to meet the customer demand. There's a lack of work to do during the proposed working times. Social care 24/7. The business is planning changes to the workforce. Those are the only reasons in which you can refuse flexible working requests for employees now. And I know a lot of people will go, well, the work can't be reorganized amongst the team because this person only wants to do 9 till 3. So obviously it's not going to happen because we do 8 till 8. Where's your evidence that you've consulted with your team that these shifts aren't suitable? Because if someone's asking you for this request and you're saying, well, actually, no, we can't distribute it amongst the team. And I come in and go to your team, so this person put a flexible working request in, and I've been told that it can't distribute it. Is the sort of different working hours against everyone's sort of intentions? And they go, actually, no, I'd love different working hours. It'd be absolutely fab. You make that assumption without actually consulting your team. And it goes back to that whole trust, conflict, commitment, lack of accountability and attention to results. Because if one person asks and actually, no, you're not having it, well, why are we going to bother? Because we're never being listened to because we're just giving these responses straight away. Conversely, though, make sure you're equal and fair in the way that you do it. Because one person might say, well, I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. But then your most favorite carer might ask something. You go, yeah, sure, absolutely fine. It won't be an issue. That equally is going to breed terrible culture because it's going to be like one rule for one rule for the other. So it's around that equality and equity in everything that we do. I just didn't feel like we could mention rotas and working without flexible working.
No, you are right. It is too, but it's also worth noting it's a day one right now. So actually, you could interview somebody today, offer them a 30-hour contract. They go through their references, go to do their DBS. They could start tomorrow and then put that request in. So actually, you need to be on top of it. I'm going to share the ACAS website. They've got a whole webpage around flexible working that I've just found, but it's got a policy template, request letter templates, acknowledgement letters, outcome letters, the guidance around it, what to do, kind of all the different options there are around flexible working and compressed hours and bits and pieces. So I'll share that into the comments. Anything from you though, Kavita, around that?
I'm a huge fan of flexible working, and I've heard time and time again where the shift patterns, exactly as you said, Adam, 8 to 8 or 8 to 2, that's our flexibility. No, we can't do this at this time. We can't do X, Y, Z at that time. And I always question, well, why can't we? And I think ultimately the reason is there's 2 reasons it's normally come down to, from my experience only, that's been given to me. One is it just makes the rota too hard to do and too hard to manage. And doing a rota in itself is such a chore, and it is a massive task, as a mammoth task, so it becomes even more complex to do the rota. And I've had a lot of managers say to me, well, I did it. I was when I done my nursing degree, I had 2 kids to raise. I was a single mother. I still went on placements. There was no flexibility, and I still did it. So I expect them to do it. And it almost feels like, well, I always want to question them to say, it feels like you still got a chip on your shoulder because you were made to do it. Why are you making other people do that? It wasn't great. 40 years later, you're still carrying that hurt and that, I had to do it. I'm going to make other people do it. The world we live in now, I think we're so slow in social care for not offering it and not looking at innovative ways of filling those gaps in the rota. And different, because if you did have somebody, like you said, that could only do 9 till 3, I'm sure you'll be able to find somebody that could start, I don't know, at 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock, because that works for them.
Not even that, Kavita. How many people out there go and work in office buildings as cleaners because it's the only hours that suit them, because they start at 5, they finish at 8, and they get everything done. but they go, oh, do you know, I'd love to work in social care, but the hours just don't meet my needs.
Yeah.
If you have 5 till 8 shifts in the morning, every single morning, you could take
Yeah,
those
you're
people
right.
away from other industries and bring them into social care.
Yeah,
You know, it's
absolutely.
thinking around those different demographics. We're actually cutting ourselves. You know, we've got to get 500,000 people into social care by 2035 or whatever it is. The only way we can do that is by going out to the masses now and not just focusing on those people
Yeah.
who are fine sacrificing their life to come to work, because that is what people are doing. You know,
Yeah.
8 till 8, 4 days a week. That is what they're doing,
And when
actually.
we look at the new generation, that kind of word flexibility is nothing new for them. They expect it. It should just be, well, that's what every industry does, surely. That flexible working. Why can't we do flexible working? Well, why can't? But I think we are very behind with the times, and that does impact the culture. So when we're talking about being an inclusive organisation, going back to your point, Adam, about equity and experience, equity and outcomes, etc. Well, are we really doing that? No, we're not. If we're saying that we want to be an inclusive employer, then why are we stopping so many people or preventing people from doing it? Because if you don't, as a provider, start doing it, other providers will start doing it soon. And people will just jump ship and go to them instead, because it will work better with them. I think that's one of the biggest lessons probably from the COVID pandemic. The majority of people took away that actually work-life balance is now really important. I know that's one of my lessons from it. Absolutely one of my lessons of work-life balance. You know, it's not all going to be work, work, work. I need to think about the other side as well. I think that's still in people's minds, that's what they want.
Yeah. So, thinking about life-work balance and putting ourselves first, I think one of the first things I say to my team as well is, I am not going to give you a medal if you're going to work 7 days a week. I am not going to celebrate you for doing 90 hours a week. I'm going to be asking you, how can I stop you from doing that? Because I need you to look after yourself. How can we, as providers, as managers, as leaders, address burnout and stress within our workforce to maintain that healthy environment?
I think about having open conversations, and if people aren't telling you, it comes back to, actually, as a leader, am I not approachable? You know, why aren't people telling me about maybe some of the issues they've got or what they're struggling with? So we need to have a much more open kind of conversation, an open culture towards that as well. I think some people now are pretty good in speaking and talking about it and holding their hands up, but I think you've still got people in social care relying I suppose social care relies a lot on goodwill, who will go that extra. So if you know that somebody's just done 4 back-to-back 12-hour shifts, but now you need somebody to cover on a Friday, and that person says, okay, I'll do it, we need to say no. You need to take a break. You shouldn't be doing this. I'm not, as much as I'm desperate and I really need it covered, actually it's not good for your health. So when you start saying things like that as a leader, it has so much more clout. It has a much wider knock-on effect to the rest of the your team members, as people are like, God, this person actually cares about me. This person's thinking about my goodwill and my well-being as well. And it is a question that, as we know, CQC have already started to ask staff members when they're doing their assessments. You know, how is your well-being being supported in the workplace? You know, how does your manager support you, etc., etc. So I think well-being is a massive thing. I think we should add it into supervisions, keep an eye on it. It should be part of the culture that we're managing we're supporting our staff. And I always say in care, in our sector, we should be the leaders at that, because that's what we do as a job. We are caring for and supporting vulnerable people's well-being all the time. If we can't do it for our staff, I don't think any other sector would never be able to do it. So we should be leading the way in our sector on putting our staff's well-being right up there.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just thinking then about the sort of flexibility angle again, because, you know, we'll have homes, and I'm going to say homes because I know a lot of our structure in our organisation is the same, and it is something on our 12-month plan. But you'll have your 8 till 8 and you cover your day, but actually your busy times are your morning and your nights. And those are your really sort of massively busy times in providing that really attentive care. And that's when people start to feel the burnout, because they're busy providing all of that care all day long. They're late getting stuff done. Then you've got your lunches and everything like that, and then you're busy again in the evening. Whereas if you go flexibility, cut out a couple of people in the middle of the day, put them at either end of the day, have more people in the morning, more people in the evening. Your care will skyrocket in quality and attentiveness.
Yeah.
And then during the day, you're not adding an additional cost because you've reduced it during the day where you might not necessarily need those numbers. You know, it's around that workforce dependency tool. Mark, you and I talk a lot about burnout and a lot about stress and a lot about life-work balance. What are your sort of tips for managers out there listening?
I think you've definitely got to set an example. And I think I work all hours, but I do say to my team, I don't expect to reply. And I think I've worked for organisations where your manager would email you out of office hours, but I expect to reply. And actually, at the bottom of my emails, it all says, actually, I might send this at a time that's convenient for me, but I'm not expecting, like, if I need an urgent response, I'll be phoning you. Like, actually, otherwise, just respond when you're next working. But I think it is around putting those things that we all talk about into practice. So I think actually making sure that you take your break, like, actually, no, you know, we're all busy. I mean, mine's reablement, so more home care. Actually, we are all busy, and the majority of us probably don't take a break. But actually, why don't once a week, all of us just sit down together, all bring in a dish, all bring in something, and just have lunch? And actually, we might go over a half-hour break, but actually, we haven't taken a break all week. So let's actually get to know one another and spend time around a table, or get a takeaway, or do whatever. Actually, work finishes at 4:30. Actually, we're going to leave at 4:30 unless there's an emergency and something needs doing. Actually, let's all wrap around each other and say, actually, come on, log off, let's go. Like, what can wait, and we can pick up the rest of it tomorrow, and just support one another. I think the other thing for me that's really important is, I think there's so many managers that will do so well for their teams, but don't have that in return. And I think actually it's a bit like what we said earlier. They need to be able to have that encouragement, but the ability to raise their voice and say, actually, the wellbeing offering for me isn't great. I give it to my team, but actually I need something more. And I don't think we do that enough as managers. I don't think we say, actually, I don't get enough, or what's in it for me. But also, I think one of my biggest bugbears is, if your full-time staff that get perks and rewards, and, you know, whatever that might look like, that encourages that positive workplace culture, then part-time staff normally get the equivalent of whatever their FTE is. And then you might have volunteers, bank workers, 0 hours that just don't get anything because their bank staff and 0 hours. And actually, to me, that really instills a really bad culture. And I think for a lot of us, we talk around flexible working and working time balance, and I find it really hard with that tail on the screen. But actually, we encourage that. So actually, a lot of people go to bank work because actually it's convenient for around them. If they want to go and do a different qualification, they need to do evening, whatever the reason is. But actually, then we penalise them by taking away that sick pay, or taking away that health insurance, or whatever the perk is that we offer. So I think actually we all need to have that autonomy to stand up and say, actually, that's not right at whatever level, regardless whether you're a manager or you're a care worker or a cleaner or whoever. Like, all of us should be able to have that voice and say, actually, we deserve more. And I don't think it doesn't have to cost £1 million. No. Actually, I've worked for organisations that are just scraping by month to month to month to pay staff, but have the best wellbeing support in place, and signposting people and making sure the resources are up to date. Actually, you don't have to have all the fancy EAPs and everything, because actually a lot of the time they're underutilised. But actually, networking with companies like Grace Cares and the Care Workers Charity that offer, you know, support and wellbeing, look at what locally you can do. Even just supporting somebody to go to the GP and actually reassure them, actually, it's okay. Do you want us to come with you? Do you need extra check-ins? Is more than enough. Just need to be heard, I think. And I think that's the biggest thing, is making time.
I think, especially when it comes to wellbeing, like you just touched on that, about going to see your GP. I know a manager said that one of her members of the team was going to take half a day off to go to the GP. But, you know, this person gives it their all at work. They're really productive. They're really passionate. They really care. So she was like, well, what time's your GP appointment? Right, you don't need to take a day off. Leave to go to your appointment and come back afterwards. You know, it may well take you a bit longer. We know how rushed they are and how they're never on time. But you don't have to take a half a day leave just to go to a GP appointment. But I have heard managers say, well, no, get the appointment when you're on your day off. But we know how difficult it is to get an appointment. So if you manage to finally get one, but just things like that, I think, make a difference. And that supports an individual's well-being. It shows that you care. That has that knock-on effect to the culture of the place as well. All these little things added together have that bigger impact somewhere else down the line as well.
No, absolutely. And I think it's like, if you've got somebody that's going on and local authorities do great training for kind of your frontline staff and leaders and managers now. Actually, if that training is 2 till 4, why make somebody come back in if they've only got an extra hour? Why not actually say to them, do you know what? You're going on this course, finish early, even if you finish at 1 o'clock, like, just go home and enjoy the day. Like, we'll pay you. Because like you said, they've probably worked 60 hours anyway and not claimed for half of those. So
But
actually,
that person
they'll
will remember that. They will give you more back. That's the bit. Yeah, they may have left at 1 o'clock from that training and gone home and put their feet up. But I guarantee you, over the next week, they'll be giving you more. Their productivity will increase. They always feel like they have to repay you, so to speak. And that's not the reason we're doing it. But it's not to think, well, the productivity is going to go down, because it won't. It will absolutely have the opposite effect. It's about trusting them and really, really supporting their well-being with these things, because otherwise you're just going to have that high levels of sickness. You're going to have that high turnover of staff. Your costs will be massive compared to the cost of some of these things we're saying as well. Just to add another thing, I did speak to a manager who said that they were looking at flexible working, and one of the things that they noticed currently at this moment of time, because it constantly changes with their residents, was that they had more and more residents that needed help in the mornings with their breakfast and with feeding. So they've now switched the activities, and activities were happy with this, switched the activities hours. So they have some of them coming in slightly earlier to help out with meal times, which is in itself an activity. So they're now helping out with meal times. That takes off some of the pressure from the care staff who can do X, Y, Z. And actually the activities are happening, rather than happening after breakfast at 10:30, 11, the first activity, that activity is happening during breakfast, and things are happening. It's just made a difference to their culture within their service as well, which is lovely to hear.
The only other thing I wanted to add, and then I'll come and hand over to you, Adam, is actually if you've raised something that you don't think is working well, whether it's that you feel like you need more or that actually the company isn't doing it right, is actually, I think we all have a duty of care to continue banging that drum. Actually, you spoke earlier around, actually, is your staff room adequate? Actually, if it's not, put that on your survey, but don't think, oh, I've raised it once. Well, actually, you might raise it 100 times and nothing happens, but you still need to continue raising it, because actually that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think if you have raised it 100 times and nothing happens and you're really passionate about it, you want to look somewhere else for another job, because actually there are companies out there that do really look after people's well-being and take into account employees' views and opinions and want to do the right thing. And actually there's so many jobs out there, you shouldn't have to stand for actually poor well-being, poor culture. You know, if you're that staff member that goes above and beyond and your colleagues not doing anything and they're getting away with it, and you think, oh, actually, what's the point in it? Actually, that's probably the time to think, actually, I'm going to go somewhere where I am valued, and actually I can give 110% and be valued for that extra 10%.
Absolutely.
No, I agree. And we can't forget that actual evidence categories for CQC have changed, and one of them is staff and leaders. And if you want to get good in well-led, make sure your team are going to say nice things about you, and they're not going to say nice things about you if you're not listening to them and not acting on their sort of wishes and their demands. You know, it's really, really important. Kavita, I'm looking at the time, and I know we're really short on time, and I've got an 8-kilogram cat in my arms right now because you're 10 years old. But I'm thinking, just for our listeners now who might just be tuning in or just about to tune off, could you give us, I don't know, 3 really sort of useful tips that managers can take away from today and go, right, tomorrow I'm going to start doing this to start looking at my workplace culture?
Yeah, okay, I will do. So really quickly, we spoke about it right at the beginning. What is your vision? What are your values? What's the expected behaviours? Get your staff involved with them, get everybody starting to look at them and get it written out, and then communicate it. But communicate it in everything you do. So if you think about an employee life cycle, starting from that attraction piece when you're interviewing for somebody, get it out there, get your vision out there, get your values out there, get your culture out there. Make sure everything when you're sending out and you're advertising for this new role, this particular vacancy you have, make sure it talks about your culture and it's meeting your culture as well. Pick it up in the interviews, pick it up on the onboarding, the induction. And if you're saying that we treat people well, do that in the onboarding. Don't suddenly just, oh my God, the person's turning up for work today. What should we do with them? Think about that ongoing support people need, pick it up in supervisions and appraisals, and all the way through to exit. When somebody was to leave, make sure they have a nice, well exit as well. So have those and get that feedback from them. The other thing I would say is, as a leader, just notice what people do. What happens when nobody's watching? That's your true culture. And if something needs changing, then change it. Have those difficult conversations. reinforce, encourage and reward people. Celebrate real good stuff that meets the values, that meets the culture you're looking at. So people start to see and feel what good looks like as well. And make sure you're listening to people. Just as you just said, Adam, get that feedback. Be really open with that feedback. People talk about suggestion boxes. I know one service that's got QR codes in the toilets and everywhere else. They just scan it. So in that moment when I'm like, that needs to change, rather than waiting for the staff survey or, oh, I need to fill out that slip for the suggestion box, they can grab their phone, send the quick message, off it goes, job done. And I think that's a great way, using digital in the workplace as well, to get that message across. So just listen to them, accept the feedback.
You'll be very proud of me because I also have QR codes around my
home. Love it.
And I have them for our relatives and other stakeholders as well, so they can sort of submit stuff there and then. Yeah. I think for me, it's that immediate feedback, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how often is that suggestion box opened? How often is that feedback box opened? But once you've got that feedback, bloody do something with it. You know, tell them you've listened to it and you've read it and you're changing, or you said we did, no matter how twee that sounds, just do something with it. I think really great tips there, Kavita, for everybody. Mark, any final thoughts from yourself?
Completely agree with what Kavita said. I think the only thing for me would be your new starters, the ones that are kind of a month, 2 in. What attracted them to the workplace? Because then you can do more of that. Actually, was it the advert? Was it the culture? What was that? Your leavers, why have they left? Actually, reach out to people that left even up to a year ago. Why did you leave? What was wrong with the culture? What did we do well? What didn't we do very well? And those new staff that have been there for the first year, actually, again, what do we do really well? What did you apply for? What did we say in the interview? And do we do that? And what could we change? And I think if you're a manager watching, and I know the majority of people that do tune in are managers, if you feel like there needs to be change, actually escalate that up above. Because I think the second you escalate it, you're going to know whether you work for an employer that values your contribution and values your well-being and wants to have a good workplace culture, or you'll know straight away whether you don't, and whether you're just going to either then toe that line, or I think for me, you've got then that easy decision. But I think reach out, and I think we've shared some great resources around ACAS. Actually, if you've got a policy, double check your flexible working policy. Yeah. Actually, does it incorporate all those new law changes that Adam spoke about earlier? If it doesn't, get on the ACAS website, which is in the comments, but share it back on the screen here. Actually, go and pinch bits off of their free policy, go and update your letter templates and bits and pieces, and actually go and review your rotas and speak to your staff. Actually, we want to do better at flexible working. What does that look like for all of us? Can we make that work? And you might not be able to do everything, but you might be able to do something for 1 or 2 people, and those 1 and 2 people will spread that culture around. Sorry, I'm going on a ramble. Adam, anything from you?
Well, I don't want to echo anything that you guys have said I will echo it, but I won't say it again because I fully agree with everything you said. I think the only thing that I would say is if you are a manager, a leader, a deputy manager at this moment in time in an organisation, and you think, do we have a bad culture? I would start by saying, ask yourself, would I be happy to work as a member of the team? Would I be happy and would I be satisfied in my role and in my options and in my flexibility and in my support and resources if I was one of the care team? And if you go, oh, no, I wouldn't. I'm really lucky to be in my position. You got a bad culture, babes, and you need to sort it out. You know, if you're not going to be happy to do what your team are doing, chances are you've not got a good. And I'm not talking about salaries. And, you know, we've all worked our way up and we all, you know, we deserve the work that we do. We deserve the salaries that we get. And I totally understand that. I'm not talking necessarily around the salary aspect of things. What I'm talking about is that sort of general, would I be happy coming to work every day? Salary aside, would I be happy coming to work every day? And would I be content going home every day? And if you're not that sure, do a shift on the floor with them. Work with them on the floor and then figure it out for yourself as well. Go back to the floor. Go back to the floor. Understand it yourself. Because, yes, they might tell you one thing, but you can also learn by feeling yourself and experiencing yourself, and utilize that so that your approach is 100% holistic. You know, it's super, super important. I would also say if you are in the ability to, if you've got people coming through and they're on a sort of updated DBS, have you got that ability to do paid job day trials within your organization? You know, can you get a few people, if you've got large homes, for example, pay someone to say, look, we're going to employ you for a month period, temporary contracts. We just want you to do temporary job day in each of our organizations and feedback to us what it is you've experienced. You know, is there a way of getting that sort of mum test, but for our team rather than just for the care aspect? Is there a way of getting that outsider's POV to go, no, I really wouldn't work in this home because of X, Y, and Z? Or I did one day there, fabulous. Did the other day there, that woman, she just did not stop gossiping and stirring and moaning. And that's, you know, really important. If you try and talk to just your team and you've got that cliquey nature, you're never going to get those accurate answers and those accurate responses. So think outside the box. The box is so rubbish now. No one likes boxes anymore. Boxes, put them in the bin. You know, we're always working outside the box. We never work inside a box, ever. We end up in a box, so let's not work inside one, okay? Let's always work outside the box as much as we can do. But I think, Kavita, you've shared some really great top tips tonight. You've shared some really great insight for managers. And you're coming on again soon, aren't you?
I believe in August. Top of my head. Yeah.
Well, that's around the corner. That's around the corner.
It is, isn't it? God, scary. It'll be summer then. It'll be summer in August when I'm next back.
You'll be on the Christmas count. I'll have my 6 Christmas trees up. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us tonight. You can go and find out about Kavita's website and all of her services on our supplier list, LDG Training. But just tell us what your website is, Kavita, for anyone that is listening.
Nice and simple, www.ldgtraining.co.uk.
Wonderful. Please do go check out Kavita Brown. A huge thank you to our sponsors, as always, Prosper World, Care Business Associate Training, and Attis Care by Attis Insurance. Mark, forever grateful the work that you do in the background on the Caring View. Mark is our superstar here at the Caring View. I don't know how he manages it with a farm, 3 kids, and what feels like 2 full-time jobs. You know, absolutely brilliant. And I love doing this every single Tuesday with you. What are we discussing next week?
Next week is the power of growth mindset. So we're actually joined by Paul Blaine from CBAT. So yeah, really looking forward to that conversation. Paul's actually joining us for the next 2 weeks. So he's discussing that next week. And then the week after is around developing mental toughness. So another great conversation for leaders and managers and those that actually might just be going through something around, you know, resilience. So I think we hear a lot around actually resilience training, and the majority of resilience training courses I've been on aren't the greatest. Actually, yeah, really looking forward to that conversation. It'll be a good one. But just want to echo. What's that?
I said it's going to be so good.
It will be. And I just wanted to echo, Kavita, thank you very much for joining us. And
you're welcome. I loved it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Yes, see you in August. And if you don't know, or you think you don't know who Paul Blaine is, if you ever joined the Health and Social Care Club on Clubhouse, I think it was, Mark, the other... he used to moonlight with another social care thing. You'll know Paul Blaine from that. Paul's amazing. And I am going to ask him to get his pecs out next week because he's doing all of his bodybuilding. And if he doesn't come with a tan next week from his expos, I'm going to be very disappointed. Please do check us out. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and Instagram next Tuesday live at 7:30. Until then, go check out the website, catch up on our episodes on the podcast, brush up on your CQC knowledge, visit our sponsors, download our resources, ask for more, tell us what you need, tell us what you want, we'll create it, no wish for us, and it will always be completely free. But until then, enjoy whatever bit of summer we're having at this moment in time, and we will see you on Tuesday. Good night, take care.
Bye.